Starting us off today is a little guy who goes by the name Dr. Psycho. Now, Wonder Woman, being a warrior-bound Amazon, sometimes daughter of Zeus, is one tough lady, and as you'd expect, a good chunk of her opponents are equally, if not more, physically intimidating and pack one heck of a punch. And then there's Dr. Psycho. Dr. Psycho is not physically intimidating at all. He is 3'9" with no kind of super strength. But what Dr. Psycho lacks in physicality, he makes up for in being absolutely psychotic, but also one of the strongest telepaths on the planet. Psycho can match up to Martian Manhunter in terms of his telepathic prowess, and can control multiple different minds with his powers at the same time. On top of that, he is just so incredibly sadistic. When combined with that absolute power, he can cause a bad day for even someone as capable as Wonder Woman. And before we move on, I'm curious, who are your favorite underappreciated villains in not just comics, but in any form of media? Let me know down in the comments below. But next up on the docket for today is Lord Deathman. The Japanese crime boss known as Lord Deathman has battled Batman both in American comics and in Japanese manga, using his powers to seemingly overcome death itself, able to rise from the grave no matter what his injuries are. In his first appearance in Batman 180 in May 1966, he passed away 3 times using a yogi technique to appear passed away before the final conflict, which saw him actually get struck by lightning and go on to the pearly gates. But since then, he has actually gained the real power to come back from the grave, but at the cost of having a bare-boned skull for a head. His regenerative abilities are so powerful that his fluids are used to create the infamous Lazarus pits that Ra's al Ghul uses to stay young and immortal. One of the first ways Batman defeated Lord Deathman with his new powers is honestly a little out of character for the Crusader. He threw Lord Deathman off of a building into the path of an armored car, which took the criminal down just long enough for Catwoman to lock him in a safe, and then he was shot out into space, and he still somehow came back. Next up is Rogol Zaar. Rogol Zaar is basically an alien warlord who was actually created by the papa of Superman, Jor-El. Rogol was responsible for destroying Krypton along with Empress Gandello of the Trillium Collective. He went on to later invade the Fortress of Solitude, and he destroyed the shrunken Kryptonian city of Kandor. Now, following a series of battles with Superman and Supergirl, the pair were only able to come out on top when the Girl of Steel used a Phantom Zone projector to send Zaar to the Phantom Zone. Now, all of that is pretty impressive, but what really sold a lot of people on his actual raw power was later on, when Rogol escaped from the Phantom Zone, leading an army of criminals, including General Zod, who then turned on him. He did battle with Superman, Supergirl, General Zod, John Kent, and even Crypto the dog, all at the same time, until the Thanagarians showed up and put Zaar in permanent stasis. Clifford Smek was a participant in a government experiment which caused him to tap into the quantum field, which allowed him to then manipulate dark matter. Now, we have no idea what that really means because we don't even really know what dark matter is, but in DC Comics, the dark matter in Major Force's body allows him to do incredible things like absorb energy, fly, regenerate, and even create light constructs like a Green Lantern can. Another side effect of all this concentrated energy inside of him means that he will go off like a nuclear boom boom if he is cut. That on its own is a huge power boost, simply because now, as a result, most superheroes can't even risk fighting Major Force, just in case they cut him. But then, on top of that, even if he does go off, ripping apart his own body on an atomic level, the dark matter that he controls will just put Major Force back together again. And that's not even everything. Not only is Major Force a physical threat, but he is also, just to top it off, a psychological genius. Simply by talking to the Green Lantern Kyle Rayner, Major Force convinced the superhero to give up his own power ring, the source of his power, and one of the most dangerous things in the universe. Prometheus is going to be up next on our list today, and heroes and villains with no powers always seem to be some of the most powerful. It's kind of strange. Prometheus, after seeing his criminal parents pass away at the hands of the police, he vows a vendetta on any form of justice, a vendetta that would push him to be able to defeat the entire Justice League single-handedly. He shot the Martian Manhunter with a dart that turned his powers against him and set him on fire. He infected Steel's armor with a computer virus which commanded the suit to damage the Watchtower. He hypnotized the Huntress into unconsciousness, attacked Green Lantern with a neural chaff that rendered his ring useless, Regardless, he trapped the angel Zariel in limbo, tricked the Flash into believing that he had planted motion-sensitive devices that would just go off if the Flash used his powers, and he defeated Batman in hand-to-hand combat, which is nuts. His origin is very similar to Batman's. After his parents were dispatched from the mortal plane, he would travel the globe training and becoming the ultimate combat machine. But he also attended all the top universities, learning as much as he could. He eventually set up a base in the Ghost Zone, and from here he built an armor that could download information on any opponent's fighting style, kind of reminiscent of Taskmaster's ability from Marvel Comics. He is kind of crazy capable, but his vendetta on any kind of justice, plus his Batman likeness, just kind of makes him a little weird to me. Next up, we got Tattooed Man. Abel Tarrant was a sailor who discovered a strange chemical that could bring drawings to life. Now, realizing the potential this chemical had, he inked his entire body with it and became the supervillain Tattooed Man. While performing crimes, his ink actually comes to life to attack his enemies. Over the years, he has fought superheroes with tattoos of tigers, cars, ships, monsters, bears, fire, planes, and dinosaurs. He can even use a tattoo of wings to give himself the ability to fly. Tattoo Man has never been considered a super serious threat, but I think he should be, because he is only limited by his imagination. There is nothing stopping him from creating a tattoo of a nuclear boom boom or even a black hole. If he inked kryptonite onto his body, there's no reason that he couldn't take down Superman if he wanted to. Next up today is Dr. Sivana. It's almost ironic that some of the biggest and the strongest superheroes find their adversaries in the form of kind of creepy, somewhat old, bald men. Superman has Lex Luthor, who isn't old, but he is bald. And then for Shazam, he's got Dr. Sivana, who is indeed both old and bald. Sivana is not the kind of guy who's going to be engaging in a battle of fisticuffs, but that's fine because his strength is in the brain department. The villain doesn't have a ton of monumental feats, but one of his best comes to us in the Multiversity Thunderworld adventures. In the opening pages of this comic, Sivana literally attacks the Rock of Eternity, which is the source of Shazam's powers and the home base for the wizard Shazam. This place has never ever been attacked for an eternity, and Sivana attacked it with a bigger Rock of Eternity, which is weird. He had his own Shazam-like team of superpowered children and his own multiversal duplicates helping him along. He manages to take the wizard Shazam prisoner and mine the rock for its own power, granting himself his own monstrous Shazam-like form, and it's crazy. Now, with a name like Psycho Pirate, it's easy to not take this villain too seriously, but Roger Hayden is quite the capable guy. Hayden wears a faceplate called the Medusa Mask, which can control the emotions of anyone nearby, and he staunchly believed that this was his ticket to riches and power. When heroes or the police try to stop his crime sprees, Psycho Pirate just uses his mask to overwhelm his opponents with shame, guilt, depression, or any other number of emotions. He can also make a person develop a phobia of anything he wants them to be afraid of. Like, in his debut issue, he made Dr. Fate, one of the most powerful magic users in DC Comics, develop Sitophobia, aka the fear of food. And then he attacked Fate with a pizza. That's amazing! Psycho Pirate has played a huge part in some of the biggest DC comics ever, including Crisis on Infinite Earths and Infinite Crisis. If you needed more proof, Amanda Waller, the head of the Task Force X program, aka the Suicide Squad, has claimed that Psycho Pirate is one of the scariest beings in the universe, calling him, quote, a man who could make gods go mad, a man who could make the mad gods sane again. And in our second place today is Extant. Henry Hall, the brother of Donald Hall, aka Dove, started his comic book life as Hawk, being empowered alongside his brother by a Lord of Chaos and a Lord of Order who had fallen in love. Now, Henry represented chaos. Hawk and Dove together were vigilantes and were even part of the Teen Titans for a time. After the Crisis on Infinite Earths, however, in a dystopian near future that was home to a time-traveling hero called Wave Rider, Henry had become an oppressive tyrant named Monarch who ended up going back in time and fighting the modern-day heroes before he was wiped out by the Henry of the present day. I hope you can follow that because it was kind of hard for me to follow when I read it. Present-day Henry then took up the Monarch title and mantle in the modern day, becoming a villain. Now eventually, Monarch stole the time powers from Wave Rider and then allied himself with Parallax, aka the corrupted Hal Jordan, and he took on the new villain name of Extant. While he was the front for Parallax's scheme to recreate the multiverse using alternate timelines, he tried to alter time to give himself an entire army of superheroes and found himself battling all the greatest members of the JSA, and Extant tore through them all like they were a joke, and he even used his temporal powers to age up the members of the JSA that he didn't just straight up send to the afterlife. And lastly today, I think anyone who hasn't heard of this villain before would be forgiven. When you think of the most fearsome villains, specifically the villains of Captain Marvel, otherwise known as Shazam, you may not first think about the 7-inch long sentient worm from Venus known as Mr. Mind. This diabolically evil mind-controlling worm, after the events of Infinite Crisis, would cocoon himself and then emerge as a massive monstrosity capable of manipulating reality, consuming universes, and traveling through time and space. He was described as, quote, eating years and events from this universe's history, altering the Earth with every flap of his giant wings. It took a combined effort from Booster Gold, Supernova, and Skeets to defeat Mr. Mind by trapping him inside Skeets' shell, which was fortified by the Suspendium. Then, Booster Gold threw Skeets through time with the help of Supernova to the day that he was first discovered on Earth by Dr. Sivana, and then he's trapped in a time loop forever. So they didn't actually end him or defeat him, they just trapped him. This all-powerful, mind-controlling 7-inch long worm.
Number 10, Red Canary. On his part 1, AJ talked about Black Canary, who I personally really wanted to also discuss on this list. So, because of that, I decided I'd tell you about another Canary adjacent character. This one is an up-and-comer who might not be super powerful yet, but who you might want to watch out for when it comes to her potential as a hero. Red Canary was inspired by the hero Black Canary to become herself a hero in the same bird style and title. As far as we know right now, her name is simply Sienna. She took up the mantle after the death of the Justice League, believing them to actually have died, and thinking the world needed new heroes to replace the League. However, of course, Black Canary and the other heroes would return, they weren't really dead, but Red Canary has chosen to stay on and fight as a hero still. When it comes to her skills and powers currently, she's an experienced martial artist, which honestly is super street level just in and of itself. Red Canary also fights with the Screama sticks like Nightwing, but her sticks were stolen from a villain and as such are also kinda high tech. Number 9, Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex initially started out as a hero from the Wild West. He made his first appearance in the 1972 comic All-Star Western issue number 10. He was introduced as a famed bounty hunter who gained prominence at first during the frontier days in the 19th century. Jonah is not your typical hero, but is instead an anti-hero who is killed many times over, but attempts to stick to his own personal moral code, fighting back against his own violent instincts to keep himself in check when need be. He also wears a Confederacy uniform because he actually did fight in the American Civil War, but he actually wears it to like atone for his past sins because he sees that as like a bad thing. So in case you were wondering why he's wearing that, that's why he's wearing that. It's a statement. It's not him actually believing in what the Confederates were fighting for during the Civil War. Number 8, Black Lightning. Black Lightning is a hero that we truly do not talk about enough. Initially, Jefferson Pierce appeared in the 1977 Black Lightning comic in issue number 1. He was a vigilante who typically could be found fighting crime in the inner city. Pierce himself by day is a school teacher and principal, but at night, he becomes the vigilante Black Lightning. Jefferson can create raw electricity and use it to fight crime by emitting blasts, creating shields which boost his strength, and using it to teleport even. He also has a healing factor. Not only is Jefferson powerful when it comes to his superpowers, but he's also studied with Batman in hand-to-hand combat and is considered himself an accomplished athlete. He also brings his own everyday skills of teaching to the table, which makes him a pretty decent leader, I would say, when he needs to be, and also means he is quite educated and smart when it comes to his knowledge base. Number 7, Detective Chimp. While Detective Chimp has dabbled in the realm of the spiritual and mystical, he is also ultimately a private detective, which puts him pretty much at street level by default. However, as is clearly evident when it comes to this list, this does not mean that Bobo T Chimpanzee should be underestimated. underestimated. He may be a chimp, but he also possesses one of the most gifted minds on all of planet Earth. Bobo is immortal, granted this power by the magical fountain of youth that he once drank from. It also gave him supreme intelligence, allowing him to communicate with and understand humans as well. When it comes to his detective skills, he is on par with heroes like Batman, making him basically one of the best detectives in the entire world. He also has some skills when it comes to combat, even if it isn't his forte per se, and like I said, he has some knowledge of the occult and magic as well. Over his life, he has possessed the Sword of Night and the Helmet of Fate. Number 6. Static. Static is based in Dakota City, and this is often where we see him operate when it comes to him fighting crime. Initially, Static was a part of Milestone Comics, but this comic line ended up getting bought by DC, and recently even saw its line of comics within DC relaunched. Yay! Static himself has been a part of the DC universe since before that relaunch though, although with it, Static himself, along with the other heroes from Milestone, also saw a revamp somewhat of their origin stories and their looks. Instead of it being a gang war that Virgil was caught up in when his powers activated, he was instead attending a Black Lives Matter protest with his friends. When experimental tear gas was deployed in an attempt to stifle the protest, the substance, which, like I said, was experimental, resulted in him and others attending getting superpowers. This event, like in the original comic series, would become known as the Big Bang, with Static being referred to as a bang baby because this is where he gets his electromagnetic and electrokinetic powers from. Number 5. Blue Beetle. While everything may feel like it's coming up hamey with the release of DC and Warner Brothers' Blue Beetle film rapidly approaching us, Ted Kord was Blue Beetle prior to Hamey's appearance, and even now, he still is Blue Beetle. Hamey is also awesome, but I thought I would inform those who may not know about this about the Blue Beetles who have actually come before. Ted Kord did die in the New Earth continuity, but I believe he is still alive and well in the Prime Earth continuity, which is the current main continuity when it comes to DC Comics. Ted Kord as Blue Beetle is a genius who is even on a similar level to Batman when it comes to his own ingenuity and inventing skills. Not only that, but he is also a skilled computer hacker, an acrobat, a martial artist, and he has experience piloting. And that's on top of all of the stuff his suit can just do by itself, so yeah. Pretty impressive. Number 4. Nightwing. One of my all-time favorite heroes, especially lately with Bruno Redondo and Tom Taylor working on the amazing Nightwing book. Goodness, what an amazing time to be alive and be a Nightwing fan right now. When it comes to Nightwing, you can typically find him swinging above the streets of Bloodhaven, which tends to be where he is based ever since he decided to move out from Batman's shadow and become his own hero, with Dick Grayson moving from Robin to Nightwing. As Nightwing, Grayson is basically like a more optimistic version of Batman, except that instead of being a millionaire, at least not normally he's a millionaire, he tends to be more a person of the people. In fact, he even struggles sometimes to pay rent like most people do. And even recently, when he did inherit a massive sum of funds following Alfred's death, he decided to use this newfound fortune to actually fix up the city of Bloodhaven, promising to give pretty much all of it away through investing in various sites and programs that can better help Bloodhaven fight against the crime and corruption it faces and its residents face daily. I just love that. I love how Dick is like, I just got a bunch of money, I'm not even gonna keep it, I'm just gonna pretty much give it all away. I'm still gonna stay a man of the people. Number 3. Hellblazer. Also known as John Constantine, the original Hellblazer from Vertigo was very much a street level hero. And yeah, back in the day, this was one of the names that he went by, Hellblazer. Well, he was more of an anti-hero, I guess I should say, but I doubt we'll ever do a top 10 most powerful street level anti-heroes in DC Comics because that would be a pretty niche list, even for us. So I figured if I wanted to talk about John on a list like this, now was basically my chance, so I'm taking it. Constantine initially started out as basically an occult-based detective. He answered calls for help around London and did his best to sort out supernatural matters that were often extremely dark and challenging problems to solve. Seriously, go back and read the original Hellblazer series, it is an experience. While there are likely smarter detectives out there when it comes to their brain power, John is probably the most ruthless detective we have over at DC Comics. He's very wily. He's willing to do all sorts of questionable things in order to fix a problem, and even will put his and others' souls on the line when he feels it's necessary. Underline others, because I feel like John also really loves to barter with other people's souls and lives. Number 2. Batman. Batman is my favorite hero out there, so of course I have to include him on this list. He is after all the ultimate street level hero, which might feel weird to say considering how big of a hero he has become when it comes to his fame. But at the same time, Batman started out just patrolling the the streets of Gotham. And Gotham has always been his city. Sure, he's gone international, he even started his own international network of Bat-themed or affiliated heroes with Batman Inc., and Batman has even gone to space and traveled through time. But at the end of the day, Gotham is his home, and it's the place he always returns to. When it comes to some of his most iconic stories, this is where they take place, and the city is what Batman is often fighting to protect against all odds. Number 1. Danny the Street. Danny the Street has to be the ultimate street level hero, because, well, he's literally a street. Danny the Street made his first appearance in Doom Patrol in the 90s in issue number 35 of the second volume. Danny himself is a sentient street that can teleport anywhere around the world. He controls what appears on the street and who he decides to house there, with of course the street literally being him, often providing a safe haven for the outcasts of society, especially those who are outcast because of their sexual orientation or their gender identity. But not always. He takes all kinds of outcasts, I would say.
Alright, kicking off the list at number 10 today is Martian Manhunter. Now look, Martian Manhunter may be one of the main Justice League members, but he gets slept on way too much. I will always reference this when describing John's power, but there is a panel from the New 52 when Martian Manhunter is fighting off all the members of the Justice League at the same time. With his left hand, Manhunter is using his shape-shifting ability to turn that hand into a massive spiked club and whacking away both Cyborg and Green Lantern. With his right hand, I think it's safe to say he's showing off his super strength, as he's got a power grip on the lasso of truth, and I'm assuming he's just resisting its power. Behind him is Aquaman, who's like jabbing John with his trident, but the trident is just phasing through him because John can become intangible. Then we got Superman, who's like flying around the fight at a decent distance while Manhunter uses his heat vision to keep him there. And then the funniest part is Batman doing absolutely nothing, just picking up the Flash, who seems to have just been knocked down. It's almost a perfect display of his abilities, but leaving out a handful and one of the biggest. John is the most powerful telepath on Earth, and one of the most powerful in the entire universe. Martian Manhunter has been called the most powerful being on the planet, and he's at the top of the list of people that Superman is afraid to fight. Number 9, Booster Gold. Poor old Booster Gold, the greatest hero that you've probably never heard of. His day job involves traveling through time and space, ensuring that events that are meant to happen do happen, and he absolutely rocks at it. There was even a time that Booster went so far as to create an entire second persona named Supernova for himself, while simultaneously faking a psychological breakdown and eventually faking the passing of his own Booster Gold identity, all while he went and successfully replaced several major superheroes who were missing at the time, including Superman. The thing about Booster Gold is that in order to protect himself from other time travelers, Booster has to come across as a failure, an absolute dumpster fire of mediocrity. Somebody that no one will ever want to bother with remembering anything about in the future. That's why Booster has this shtick of being greedy, incompetent, and attention-seeking, which actually kind of began as genuine, but has long since been a facade. He willingly endures a life of ridicule from the people he protects without them knowing, because when you're dealing with time travel, being the butt of the joke actually gives you an advantage. Booster is also called upon to maintain events which are pretty much less than excellent, like ensuring that bad things that have to happen actually happen. For example, he routinely guards a little German baby boy born on the 20th of April 1889 in a small town in Austria-Hungary from other first-time time-traveling superheroes. He does all of those things because the alternative is the complete unraveling of all time and space and the destruction of everything. Number 8, Firestorm. Where do we even start with Firestorm? The main version of the character is Ronnie Raymond, who is fused with his professor, Martin Stein. But there are a lot of other versions of Firestorm, a lot of whom are either one person or different fusions of other people. It's annoyingly complex. The character, as you might guess, has pyrokinetic abilities plus durability, flight, reflexes, and super strength. But the character's main thing is that they can rearrange the molecules of matter. Now this ability is obviously incredibly OP, and it would simply take one story to make him completely god level, but for the most part, writers kind of misuse him. Potentially, this character could transform entire planets into whatever he wanted. With this power, Firestorm's done some pretty godlike things. For example, Firestorm manifested a pink bunny mascot suit out of thin air around the villain's Skull Crusher. He's turned explosions into a jack-in-the-box, and a cement truck into a giant teddy bear. It's kind of hilarious, but like low-key, absolutely insane. On a way less hilarious note, he also turned a girl into salt when he was resurrected as Deathstorm. And in Doomsday Clock, Firestorm accidentally turned a crowd of Russian protesters into glass. But outside of matter manipulation, Firestorm has had some impressive feats, like surviving the nuclear meltdown that originally created the hero and absorbing all the excess radiation. And another time, Firestorm survived a straight-on nuclear explosion. An alternate version of the character called Deathstorm was able to absorb and capture 3 different Justice League teams into its own Firestorm matrix. And in Infinite Crisis, Firestorm was able to seal a multiversal rift. In case you haven't noticed, we have kind of moved away from physically unstoppable characters to characters that are just pure science fiction gods. Number 7, John Constantine. John Constantine is a really fun inclusion for this list because he is extremely powerful and not powerful at all at the same time. John can wield magic for sure through years and years of learning, training, traveling, but he doesn't have any kind of magical affinity or any kind of beneficial magical family heritage. John relies on actual magic as a very last resort, and the magic he knows how to use isn't anything to scoff at. He has even, very momentarily, been able to hold back Dr. Fate, but using magic comes at a cost, and he knows this. So what Constantine prefers is trickery. Lies, deceit, traps, his wits, weapons, artifacts, backup, and calling in favors. John smokes, he drinks, he's in his middle ages, and he ain't in the greatest of health. He can throw a punch, for sure, but most people are a physical match for him. But at the same time, he has been able to trick, outsmart, or overpower gods, demons, and angels. Batman, Superman, Darkseid, Swamp Thing, Dr. Fate, the Phantom Stranger, the Spirit of Justice, the Spectre, the Spirit of Vengeance, Lucifer, and even the Presence, who is basically DC's version of God. He tricked them all. He tricked the Presence into curing John of cancer and granting him divine protection by selling his soul to 3 separate Hell Lords who would start a civil war over his soul, which would spill out onto Earth and into heaven. Don't sleep on this bad-mouthed middle-aged man. Number 6. Atom Smasher. Thanks to exposure to radiation, Atom Smasher is already an incredibly impressive looking guy. He stands at 7 foot 6 inches tall, and he is jacked. This guy's bicep is probably bigger than my torso, which isn't really saying much, but his real power is being able to grow even bigger. He has the power of atomic dispersal, meaning he is able to control the distance between his atoms, increasing to anywhere from 28 to 60 feet in height. His mass, durability, strength, speed, and stamina are all increased even more so as he grows. Now, Albert Rothstein made his superhero debut under a different name. Initially, Al went by the superhero alias of Nuklon, and he was an original member of the superhero team called Infinity Inc. But following in his godfather, the Atom's footsteps, Albert took on his Atom Smasher name and joined up with the Justice Society of America in JSA number 1 by James Robinson. The thing about Atom Smasher that makes me think he deserves better is his entire interaction with Black Adam. When Black Adam joined the JSA, one of its members that he happened to get close with was Atom Smasher, and he even convinced Smasher to leave the team and start an anti-hero team instead, which led Smasher down a darker path, even becoming part of the Suicide Squad for a time. He has been redeemed since, but I don't think he ever really deserved that in the first place. Number 5, Hawkman. Hawkman is a doozy to talk about. Essentially, he has 2 main origins. He was either a space cop or a reincarnated prince, and sometimes both. Basically, Hawkman's secret identity is Carter Hall, an archaeologist and a museum creator who is actually a reincarnation of the ancient Egyptian prince, Khufu. Now Khufu, who would become known as Hawkman, discovered an alien spacecraft from the planet Thanagar powered by an anti-gravity element called the Nth metal, which transformed his soul and doomed him and his love to be reincarnated over and over again throughout time. Some of his incarnations include Brian Kent, the Silent Knight from 5th century Britain, Conrad von Grimm, the son of a blacksmith in 14th century Germany, Captain John Smith of the 16th century English colony in Virginia, Hannibal Hawks, the Nighthawk in the American Old West, Detective James Wright, a Pinkerton detective in the early 20th century, and finally, Carter Hall himself. Whether it's because of his really confusing origins, or maybe because people don't realize how cool this character actually is, he just kinda seems to suck. And when I was a kid, I thought he was super cool. Oh, to be an innocent, sweet child again. Number 4, Raven. Teen Titans and Teen Titans Go brought the new Teen Titans to a big audience, and one character who really stood out is Raven. She's been like the character on that team that everyone seems to like regardless of who you are. Seriously, you can't go to a comic book convention without seeing someone rocking a Raven cosplay. She's like the goth icon for superhero fans. Raven's super popular, and it's kind of strange that DC hasn't done more with her. She's got an awesome but also absolutely terribly upsetting backstory, crazy strong powers that could literally destroy all we hold dear, and a personality that fans absolutely adore. Honestly, she could totally be DC's version of a much better and more interesting Scarlet Witch without any trouble. It's just frustrating that DC isn't giving her more love in the comics like they do in the shows. Number 3, Aquaman. The ocean is a genuinely terrifying and interesting place. As such, the Atlanteans of DC Comics possess a few advantages over us regular humans. They have super strength, speed, endurance, and durability, all in order to help them survive the mind-boggling pressure at the insane depths of the ocean at which they live. But Aquaman himself is a royal Atlantean, which means that he is a super Atlantean. His strength and durability has allowed him to close the Marianas Trench, which I don't even know how that works, go toe-to-toe with powerful foes like Martian Manhunter, Lobo, and Wonder Woman, and tank blasts from Starro. His speed, which is often forgotten about, allows him to swim at 10,000 feet per second, and he can move even faster without the pressure of water drag, allowing him to dodge bullets and catch lasers. But Aquaman has quite a few other advantages. His control over sea life has helped him in a large majority of his fights, with his underwater allies coming to his aid and helping him do things he probably couldn't do alone, like creating a massive tsunami with whales. His telepathic skill is actually quite impressive as well. Some of my favorite feats include him telepathically controlling a Green Lantern ring, reading the Martian Manhunter's mind without permission, and controlling a space dragon. For a while, he also had a hand that was a hook, and then that became a magical mystical water hand that could do a whole other level of feats, but I'm kind of out of time, so we're moving on. Number 2, Animal Man. Thanks to an encounter with some rather strange aliens, Bernard Buddy Baker gained access to the morphogenic field, otherwise known as the Red. This field basically allows Buddy to absorb and use different attributes of nearby animals while still being a human. So, he has been able to move his eyes independently like a chameleon, he's been able to ram against a speeding car with the abilities of a rhino, he can fly by tapping into birds, he's regenerated a whole lost limb by tapping into an earthworm, gained the strength to lift a car by tapping into a spider, and he's ran at 75 miles per hour by adopting the abilities of an ant. But his abilities have done some even more surprising things, like for example, when a villain cut Buddy off from the nearby animals by putting him in a room, he took on the attributes of the bacteria inside that villain's body, allowing Animal Man to duplicate himself. He can even tap into the attributes of extinct animals like dinosaurs, which has allowed him to punch out a T-Rex and survive being crashed into by a plane. Over time, he's received power boosts that allow him to use multiple abilities at once, and then to even use the abilities of any animal in the universe, like when he used the power of a quote sun eater, which let him fly across the galaxy in an instant. Number 1, Icon. While Milestone's Dakotaverse isn't currently a part of the DC universe, the New 52 previously merged the universes together with the Wildstorm reality. Icon returned as the most powerful Milestone character in the new Earth M setting. He was originally an alien named Arnis, whose ship crashed on an Earth plantation. Arnis was raised as an unwilling servant named Augustus Freeman until his memories and powers developed during the Civil War. He spent 100 years working as a lawyer before Raquel Irvin convinced him to become the costumed hero Icon and set an example for others. Icon has incredible strength that rivals Superman's. Icon also has incredible reserves of energy that he can project in various forms. He's one of the best Superman-like characters, and yet I feel like he just hasn't been given any real good times to shine recently. It's like DC kinda just forgot about him and a lot of the Dakotaverse alongside him.
Number 10, Batwoman. I love Batwoman, but I feel like so many times she honestly gets shafted, especially in regard to her connection to the Bat family. Granted, Kate Kane does often like to be independent from her cousin Bruce Wayne, but she's still a member of the family, and I don't think she really gets featured enough in the comics. While she has been featured elsewhere in the DC universe, she hasn't had her own self-titled series since 2018, and even then, that series only lasted for a year, from 2017 to 2018, having just shy of 20 issues. You might think, wow, well, that's still a good accomplishment in modern day comics, and you're right. However, when you look at, how long Batman always goes on for, we could have a little bit more Batwoman than like whatever she got, like 18, 19 issues. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you want more DC content from us, do I have good news for you? We have a DC Comics playlist, so go check that out. Number 9, Stargirl. Stargirl is one of those characters that I just feel we don't see enough of in the comics. Now, she has had her moments in the comics, and she did end up getting her own TV show, it is true, but considering that she did have her own TV series, I was kind of hoping we get to see more of her in the comics as a result. And in recent years, since her series started, this hasn't really been as much the case. Now, she has been on the Justice League before, sure, and she's had her own mini-series as recently as 2022, which is pretty good, but we still have never had an ongoing comic series for Stargirl. Like, she's never had a self-titled ongoing. And considering how cool Courtney Whitmore is and how much she is loved by the fans, it's honestly just kind of unfortunate. Number 8, Big Barda. Big Barda is another hero who often feels invincible in terms of her approach to heroism. Big Barda herself is a new god. She hails from Apocalypse, where she was once one of Darkseid's fearsome female furies. Despite the fact that Big Barda has recently resurfaced joining up with the Birds of Prey, which honestly I think is a great fit for her, she hasn't been regularly featured prior to this for some time. And I feel like she is a character who deserves more hype in the comics. Heck, even in the movies. Where is our Big Barda solo film, huh? I feel like actually James Gunn would probably do a really good job of putting that together. The Big Barda solo film. Oh, I would watch that. I would be in that. I don't know if I'm jacked enough to be Big Barda, but I'd get jacked to be Big Barda. She's so cool. Number 7, Naomi. Naomi is probably one of the most powerful of the newer heroes that we've seen. But do most people even know who she is? Probably not. Amber, do you know who she is, Naomi? Nope, see, there you go. Despite her powers being comparable, and I would argue even stronger than characters like Superman, she isn't often heavily featured in the comics. Unlike Superman, whose weakness is actually magic, Naomi bolsters magic around her. Haha! So magic does not have the same negative effect on her, but instead works almost in the exact opposite way. Her powers allow her to generate energy, which she can then use to boost her powers or any magic or magical beings around her. I'm still waiting for an epic Zatanna and Naomi team up to happen in the comics, and yes, I know Naomi had her own TV series, but she also only got one season of that. And while I've heard some great things about it, overall it seems like the series was met with a mixed reception between audience and critics, so. Although honestly, I gotta watch it. I should watch the Naomi series. Bet I'd probably enjoy at least some of it. I mean, I'm surprised I'm enjoying Gotham Knights as much as I am, even though that show is an experience. Number 6, Killer Frost. Caitlin Snow is truly a character that has sat on the periphery of the DC mainstream for years and years. Yet despite being super cool, pun intended, and interesting in regards to her backstory, whether we're focusing on Caitlin honestly or even her predecessor, Louise Lincoln, but especially Caitlin, she barely gets featured in the comics, appearing less than 100 times in the last 10 years. If we're talking about Caitlin Snow, that is. And that's even with a version of Caitlin's character being adapted for the CW Arrowverse television series The Flash, appearing as one of the key members of the Flash's support team there. Number 5, Batgirl. One of the weirdest things with DC is how sometimes they just completely leave their stories open to being canon or not, depending on how fans receive those stories. And one of the weirdest incidents of this happening was actually with The Killing Joke. Now, The Killing Joke was written by Alan Moore and was never intended by him to be necessarily a part of the main continuity. And as far as I know, it still isn't even really fully canon, except for one part of that story, the successful attack on Barbara Gordon by the Joker, which left her both traumatized and paralyzed from the waist down. Why this was the only thing we chose to keep from this story, I don't know. But the the whole idea of it just feels super weird to me, especially when you consider how brutal and graphic this attack was against Barbara. And Barbara gets no opportunity to defend herself, having been surprised by the Joker's visit while visiting her dad in her civilian form. That being said, she's still Barbara Gordon, so you still would think, you know, maybe she'd do something, but no. This element of the story would change Barbara's life forever, and although I do like Babs as Oracle, it feels like she was robbed of some agency here. In fact, it feels like she was robbed of a lot of agency here, especially when you consider the story was never really intended to be incorporated into the canon. Barbara Gordon has since managed to heal and return to her role as Batgirl while still keeping all the skills she was shown to have as the brilliant hacker and computer whiz Oracle. But I still feel like the fact that she suffered so severely from what was intended to be a story that existed outside of canon is brutal. Number 4, Blackfire. You know you deserve better when I've barely talked about you as a character on the channel when I've been working here for almost 5 years. Yikes. Poor Blackfire. I'm sorry, Blackfire. I'm sorry for my part in this. I feel like the thing I'd personally love to see more of from a character like Blackfire is perspective in the comics. Blackfire is the evil sister of Starfire. And I mean, she is really evil. And while she might be one of the best of the worst around, I would say she does ultimately lack some depth. Sure, she is really, really bad, but I've always found her to be more surface level in terms of her motivation behind why she does what she does. In the New Earth continuity, it's the lack of respect and love from her people and her jealousy for her young sister, Coriander, Starfire, who got all that love instead, that basically drives her to do such terrible things. In the Prime Earth continuity, this is less focused on, but still plays a role. And even in the New Earth continuity, I'd like to see more of this in terms of the nuances of Commander's character. I understand her being jealous, I get that, but how else does this affect the way the Blackfire sees not just like her sister, but like the whole world? How else does she justify such terrible actions? Is there any way to get across to her and potentially reach her on an emotional level? I want to feel for Commander, and I often feel she's robbed of any kind of sympathetic perspective, even with everything she went through as a child. I mean, like, I do feel bad for her in terms of like what happened to her, but I just feel like we never really get to connect with her, you know? And I think I'd like to do that more. Is that weird? People are gonna be like, why do you want to connect with this super evil character? Look, I love evil characters, and I think sometimes they have reasons. Number 3, Variant. Talk about women who have been shafted in the comics. How about any of these cyber women that we have seen who have acted as female counterparts to Cyborg? Among them is Variant. Variant only made a handful of appearances before she was tragically just like kind of written out, but I do think her character had promise, and I've always felt it would be cool for Cyborg to have someone to talk to who really gets what it's like to live as he does and share his perspective. Scarlet Taylor is very similar to Cyborg in that regard, being a member of the CIA who almost lost her life on a mission and was saved by being transformed into a cyborg like Cyborg himself was. Number 2, Vixen. Vixen is a supermodel turned businesswoman and in the current continuity, a supermodel slash fashion designer turned primetime show host and animal activist. Well, it's more than likely that Vixen has been an animal activist ever since she possessed the superpower to take various animal shapes. Armed with the Tantu totem, she can transform into various different animals and harness their own unique abilities and powers. And even without the totem, she currently still can call on at least some of its power, giving herself like animal characteristics basically. Still, despite having this insane amount of power at her fingertips and the fact that she has a pretty cool backstory, is stunning, and is a badass, we don't see Vixen featured that often in the comics. When we talk about Halle Berry and DC, that Catwoman movie, look, that wasn't great, but I feel like Vixen would have been an amazing character to see Barry in the role of. Number 1, Circe. While Hecate and Hera are both goddesses, at one point Circe is even more powerful than the both of them, after she takes within herself all of Hecate's power, which allows her to tap into the source of magic. Even without being able to tap into the source of magic, Circe is known for being a fearsome and powerful witch who can easily defeat many of those who would stand against her. And yet despite this, we haven't really seen Circe focused on as a villain in what honestly feels to me like forever. I know it hasn't been that long, but it feels like forever. In Justice League Dark by James Tynion IV, we even get a great look into Circe's tragic backstory that shows us why Circe is as power hungry and ruthless as she is. She didn't necessarily have the easiest life, guys. It comes from a place of self-preservation because she was so cruelly mistreated by the world. And yet despite building up her character, it still often feels like she falls by the wayside at DC Comics. She's such a cool character. She should have her own series, honestly.
At number 10 is Red Tornado. Thank you to Sunstar808 for suggesting this one in the comments of part 1. Red Tornado was basically if Vision and Avatar Aang had a baby. Created by the villainous T.O. Morrow, this android hero's body is powered by a sentient wind elemental named Ulthun. Now, what makes him stand out is, well, he boasts some seriously impressive abilities. First off, that android body of his grants him superhuman durability, stamina, and strength. But his supernatural powers are that he can manipulate wind, allowing him to move at superhuman speeds, fly, and even generate powerful vortexes. He can even transform into a human-looking form at will, so he's basically DC's answer to Vision, y'all. And since he is an android, Red Tornado is also a computer whiz and a skilled teacher. As Sunstar808 put it in the comments, he's a powerful AI being that's often relegated to a background player, even though its abilities exceed more popular members of the Justice League. At number 9 is Zatanna. Thank you to Karen Starr for this one. Zatanna is one of the unsung heroes of the DC universe who possesses a staggering array of magical abilities. Her mystical prowess grants her dominion over both cosmic and supernatural forces, effectively rendering her as a sorceress supreme. I'm a Marvel fan. Through her unique method of backward speech known as logomancy, she can initiate a wide range of supernatural effects. This includes manipulating the very fabric of reality, altering weather patterns, controlling gravity, and even disintegrating objects with a mere word. Not limited to just a magician's bag of tricks, Zatanna can heal wounds, turn invisible, and reshape molecular structures. Telekinesis, teleportation, and the ability to create force fields further cement her as a formidable hero. She's even delved into dark magic, showcasing her willingness to pay the high cost of such power. Now, despite her astounding abilities, Zatanna's magic often exacts a toll, and she's not without her limitations, particularly in her reliance on speech for logomancy. Still, this magical maven certainly deserves more recognition and appreciation than she tends to get. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. I would really appreciate if you did. At number 8 is Superboy. Thank you to Jamie Kane 3847 for this one. Honestly, I didn't really want to bring up Connor Kent, but you guys only gave me like 9 suggestions in the comments. Speaking of which, somebody said the channel should relegate me to being a research boy, so I was determined not to do any research for this video. Thanks, Jacob. Anyways, Superboy, or Mon-El, stands as one of the DC Universe's most powerful, underrated powerhouses. Born as a DNA alien clone designed to replace the fallen Superman, he's got more than just good genes, because we've got his nifty tactical telekinesis, power that forms a force field around him which mimics Superman's abilities like super speed, super strength, flight, and invulnerability. So technically speaking, at least at first, Mon-El is simply using telekinesis to mimic Superman's powers. Now let's talk about character development. Superboy has had his share of arrogance issues, particularly thanks to his DNA mix, which includes a dash of Lex Luthor. Over time, he's earned some humility, but that ego can still sneak up and bite him in the cape, causing some messy situations. At number 7 is Raven. Also known as Rachel Roth, she's a superhero who deserves more recognition in the DC universe. Her backstory is a roller coaster of emotions. She's the half-demon daughter of Trigon, a nasty demon who wants to take over the planet. Her mom, Arella, is just a human caught up in this demon drama. Raven's got to keep her feelings in check 24/7 or she risks going full-on apocalypse mode. But here's the thing, she's got a heart of gold buried underneath all that darkness. Despite her demon daddy issues, she's found a second family in the Teen Titans. And boy, oh boy, does she pack a punch. She can project her consciousness, manipulate darkness, create energy constructs, and even mess with time. The list goes on and on. She can fly, teleport, control fire and electricity. I mean, Raven's got it all. In the words of Chris Bradley, who suggested this entry in part 1, Raven definitely deserves better. She is very powerful. She looks very beautiful and stunning in her costume. I also think that Raven is the DC Comics version of Scarlet Witch. Basically what I'm saying is that Raven is awesome, period. At number 6 is Mr. Terrific. Thank you to Trek Staven 4726, I think. Sorry I butchered your username. Mr. Terrific is both Terry Sloan and Michael Holt, who are DC legacy superheroes who truly deserve more more attention. But I can see why they haven't really gotten any, because their superpower is literally just being a Marty Stew. Terry Sloan, the original Mr. Terrific, was a remarkable individual with unmatched athletic abilities, intellect, and unwavering commitment to justice during the golden age of comics. His character serves as an inspiring symbol of what a person can achieve through determination and hard work. Later on, Michael Holt took on the mantle, the modern incarnation of Mr. Terrific, who ranks as the third smartest person on the planet. Not only is he a brilliant inventor and businessman, but he's also the founding member of the Terrifics, a superhero team with unique powers and abilities. Both of these Mr. Terrifics possess an almost too good to be true quality, often seen as Marty Stews because of their extraordinary capabilities. In a world filled with superpowered heroes, Mr. Terrific stands out as the embodiment of unpowered human potential, much like Batman does, except without all the clout. At number 5 is Hitman. Despite his rather grim occupation as a hitman, Tommy's character has depth that's often overlooked. He got a raw deal when he was bitten by a parasite, granting him telepathy and X-ray vision. This upgrade could have propelled him into the spotlight, but sadly, he remains a hidden gem. His telepathic powers, though limited, gave him an edge in battles. He could sense impending threats, making him a formidable opponent, and on top of that, his X-ray vision allowed him to see through objects and environments, obviously. Tommy's military training equipped him with firearm skills, but he's far from invincible, often being outmatched. Plus, his telepathy came at the cost of chronic migraines, which he tried to alleviate with alcohol, showcasing his very human side. The fact that Tommy hasn't made it to live-action adaptations, not even appearing in the Arrowverse, is definitely a mystery. Perhaps James Gunn can give this underrated hero the recognition he deserves. At number 4 is Metamorpho. Metamorpho is the Element Man, a diamond in the rough in the world of DC superheroes. Imagine having the power to morph your body into any element you desire, from liquid to gas to solid, even toxic compounds. Rex Mason's transformation was triggered by exposure to an ancient meteorite's energy, turning him into a metahuman with a twisty, stretchy, and bouncy physique reminiscent of rubber. He's basically a walking chemistry lab and a living Swiss Army knife with the ability to create gadgets on the fly. But here's the kicker, he's not just about elemental fun and games. Metamorpho packs a punch with superhuman strength and durability. He's a skilled martial artist and has an uncanny knack for aviation and investigation. Yet this elemental hero remains largely unappreciated. He's been a part of various superhuman teams, but he's never quite demonstrated his full potential. And number 3 is Element Girl, who gained her powers by replicating the very incident that gave Metamorpho his abilities, becoming a metamorphite just like him. By the way, this entry, the last entry, was suggested by Trek Extravagant 4726. Thank you very much. Anyways, thanks to Amun-Ra, the sun god of Egypt, she could transform her body into any elemental compound and manipulate it at will. Sadly, her life took a dark turn. After leaving the CIA, she sank into depression due to her transformed appearance, which left her feeling like a freak. She attempted to unalive herself multiple times, but her powers prevented her from doing so. It was only when the essence of being unalive itself intervened that she found relief. She then implored Ra to take away her powers, allowing her to finally find eternal peace. In the end, despite her incredible abilities, depression was her greatest weakness, and it's a reminder of the importance of mental health even for the most powerful superheroes. And number 2 is Doom Patrol. The Doom Patrol is a team of metahuman heroes who often go unnoticed in the vast world of DC superheroes, but they truly deserve better recognition. This unique group consists of individuals who've been shunned by society due to their unusual powers, which have caused them immense alienation and trauma. Led by Niles Calder, known as the Chief, who was actually fired because they suspected him for causing the origin stories of a lot of these superheroes to begin with. The Doom Patrol faces foes in situations that are downright bizarre, making their adventures stand out among all the other superhero teams in DC. Their lineup includes Beast Boy, who can morph into any animal, Elastigirl, who, her power speaks for itself. Mento, who went back in time to try to prevent himself from taking over the future, super cool, and Robot Man, a former race car driver who now inhabits a formidable android body. In my opinion, the Doom Patrol boasts some of the most potent heroes in the DC universe, and it's high time they receive the recognition and love they truly deserve. Adam Eve, recommended by William Kituri, who technically isn't even a DC character, but you recommended it, and there is a DC crossover at one point, so I'm gonna allow it. As Adam Eve, her main power is subatomic manipulation, meaning that with sheer willpower alone, she can sense and manipulate matter and energy at the subatomic level, essentially reshaping reality. Flight? No problem. Adam Eve alters air density to soar through the skies. Force fields, yep, she conjures them up using her transmutation powers. And she's even got telekinesis too. Energy blasts, yeah, she's got that too. And while she commands nature's elements at the subatomic level, rearranging atoms and molecules to transmute matter, her powers don't typically work when used on organic life. You see, mental blocks limit her abilities, but extreme emotional moments can shatter those barriers, allowing her to unleash her power on organic matter. But for someone who can allegedly rearrange atoms on a molecular level, she doesn't always seem to be using it most effectively. I mean, she could take out whoever she wanted by, say, I don't know, turning the air in your lungs to ammonia. I mean, let's get real. Even with the cap on organic life, she should still be way more OP than she's depicted.
Number 10. Animal Man. Buddy Baker was once a punk rocker who was chosen to be the protector of the red, aka the web of life, aka the morphogenetic field, which, put simply, is the force that binds all living things on Earth together. From then on, Buddy discovered that he was able to absorb the abilities of any animal anytime he was in the presence of it, and he could summon those abilities at will, using them to fight crime and whatnot. These abilities include the strength of a T-Rex, the flight of a bird, the speed of an ant, the sonic blast of a pistol shrimp, the stench of a skunk, and just a whole lot more. Donning his iconic orange and blue costume and calling himself Animal Man, Buddy has teamed up with the Forgotten Heroes and the Justice League on multiple occasions to help take down Vandal Savage, Queen Bee, the Time Commander, and more. Now, the biggest struggle in Buddy's life, however, is that he is both a family man and a superhero, and he often finds it pretty hard to strike a balance between the two. Check out Animal Man for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1965's Strange Adventures number 180, or feel free to skip ahead to his Prime Earth counterpart, starting with 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, number 5. Number 9. Gotham Girl. Claire Clover, aka Gotham Girl, was half of the metahuman crime fighter duo that fought to protect Gotham City. Now, it's not really explained how or when, but Gotham Girl received her powers after purchasing a set of metahuman powers that are now tied to her life force, and the strength of her powers is determined by how much life force she is willing to sacrifice to use them, meaning more life force equals crazy strong powers. However, this was later resolved when Batman exposed her to some platinum kryptonite. These powers include superhuman strength and stamina, flight, invulnerability, and some good old-fashioned heat vision. She made her debut in Gotham alongside her brother by helping Batman save a plane that was hijacked by the Cobra cult, and at that point Batman decided to take them both under his wing to train them as better heroes. After the death of her brother, she had a ton of trouble coping, but thankfully Batman was there to help her through it by letting her in on his own struggles in his own life. The worst thing she's ever done, though, that makes me even question if she's a hero, was when she revealed to have been working alongside Bane, completely physically and emotionally breaking Batman. Check her out for yourself, starting with 2016's DCU Rebirth number 1. Number 8. Captain Marvel Jr. Now, it's no secret that superhero comics love bringing in a sidekick every now and then. After Batman got Robin in 1940, Captain Marvel was given Captain Marvel Jr. just a year later, and as obscure as he might be compared to more famous sidekicks, he was known well enough by Elvis Presley that the King himself decided to model his onstage costumes after Captain Marvel Jr. Just as the Wizard imbued Billy Batson with the power of Shazam, the Captain imparted a portion of his powers to Freddy while he lay dying because of an accident that he caused. Now, by saying the words Captain Marvel out loud, he gained all of the abilities that the original Captain has, just to a slightly lesser degree. In his human form, Freddy is forced to walk with a crutch due to a bad left leg, but as Captain Marvel Jr., he has full capabilities of his body, and then some. Now, that is just the original CMJ who debuted in 1941's Wiz Comics number 25. The Freddie Freeman that debuted in DC's The Power of Shazam number 3 also has a pretty similar origin. However, his powers were granted him directly from the Six Gods as opposed to getting them from Shazam, making him their direct champion. As a member of the Teen Titans, Justice League of America, and the New Young Justice, Freddy has helped take down some serious baddies. However, his powers were robbed from him by Osiris, and since then, he has not been able to take the form of Captain Marvel Jr. Check out Freddie Freeman for yourself and let me know what you think of him in the comments below. Number 7. Plastic Man. Originally a criminal who went by the name Eel O'Brien, Patrick O'Brien gained his malleable body after being shot and exposed to an unknown acid. When he woke up, he discovered that his entire body was elastic, and it took him a while to get the hang of it, but eventually he was able to learn how to use his powers to his advantage. Partnered up with Woozy Winks, the two stopped an attempted robbery, and from that point on, Patrick became known as the hero Plastic Man. Now, not only can Plastic Man stretch himself at will, he can also increase or decrease his size, posing as a tiny little action figure or growing to the size of a building, and he can increase his own strength by growing or adding muscle mass to his body, and he can even shapeshift, taking the form of basically anything that is impossible for humans to achieve without breaking every bone in their body. As an occasional member of the Justice League, Plastic Man not only became good friends with Batman, but but he helped take down Clayface, Dr. Psycho, and played a rather large role during the Blackest Night storyline, fighting all of these zombified heroes and seemingly dying in the process. Check out his entire story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1988's Secret Origins Volume 2, number 30, or feel free to skip ahead to his Prime Earth counterpart story, starting with 2011's Justice League International Volume 3, number 1. Number 6. The Phantom Stranger. The original Phantom Stranger was a mysterious figure whose origin and name have never been revealed. The Phantom Stranger is truly just an enigma. My favorite origin story for him is that he was originally a private citizen during the biblical times and was spared from God's wrath. An angel was then sent to deliver him from said divine wrath, and after questioning God's actions, he committed but the angel forbid his spirit from entering the afterlife, and reanimated his body and condemned him to walk the world forever, to be a part of humanity but also forever separated from it. It was then he discovered his divine charge to turn humanity away from evil one soul at a time. Basically, his entire goal was to provide warnings for events that were on their way without actually intervening himself. These warnings were often very cryptic because of this, since he's not allowed to directly stop anything. As an immortal with immense magical powers including, but not limited to, dimensional travel, spectral sight, transmutation, and energy blast, the Phantom Stranger has helped out the Justice League on multiple occasions and has inadvertently saved countless lives. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1952's The Phantom Stranger number 1, or check out his Prime Earth counterpart in 2012's Justice League Volume 2, number 6. Number 5. Mary Marvel. Fun fact, Mary Marvel has the distinction of being the very first female spin-off of a male superhero, making her debut in 1942's Captain Marvel Adventures Volume 1 number 18, predating Supergirl by more than a decade. Now, just like her twin brother Billy Batson, she became involved with the world of wizards and magic words, and by calling out the name Shazam, she can take on the same powers as her brother. However, in many of their stories, it's explained that she, her brother, and Freddie Freeman all share a finite amount of power, meaning that the more heroes who use their abilities, the weaker they all are. Interestingly enough though, Mary has also received her powers from other sources outside of Shazam. Black Adam previously gave her his powers, making her prone to violence, and Darkseid further manipulated her powers to turn her into a purely evil entity, able to cut right through a human body without any remorse or resistance. In this form, she was able to overpower someone as strong as Wonder Woman. Honestly, it doesn't really matter where she gets her powers from, she is definitely a formidable foe and more than deserves a spot on this list today. Now, if you want to know more about this character, check her out in her first appearance, or feel free to skip ahead to a more recent storyline in 1994's The Power of Shazam graphic novel. Number 4. Icon. Hailing from the planet Turbinus, Augustus Freeman, aka Icon, was marooned on Earth in 1839 in the Deep South. He worked long and hard and was very involved in a lot of black history, but it wasn't until he met Raquel Irvin that he became Icon, the icon for the black community of Dakota City. Augustus is portrayed as a very intelligent and somewhat rigid person, and due to his upper class job as a big-time lawyer and his quote-unquote proper way of speaking, he is often criticized for being a sellout, which isn't true at all. He just likes to do things properly and by the book, you know? Thanks to his alien physiology, Freeman has superhuman strength, speed, agility, and stamina. He can also fly and is basically invulnerable and doesn't actually need any food or sustenance to survive. After seeing him use his powers, Raquel persuaded Augustus to become a superhero named Icon, with herself as his sidekick, Rocket, thanks to the help of an inertia belt that allows her to manipulate kinetic energy. Throughout the majority of his series, Icon and Rocket do their best to take down these street thugs and criminals that gained powers after the Big Bang, which was a massive riot where quantum-juiced tear gas was thrown and gave superpowers to a vast majority of people. Check out the Icon and his series for yourself, starting with 1993's Icon number 1. Number 3. Zatanna. One of the greatest magic users in the DC universe, Zatanna is the daughter of the legendary magician Zatara, and does all that she can to live up to his legacy and his expectations. She spends her nights working as a simple stage magician, you know, card tricks and all that jazz, and then her late nights working as a consulting sorcerer and a superhero. Typically, to activate her spells, she speaks backwards, like for example, Tagroff would make someone forget something, Lay would heal any wound, you know, etc, etc. But that is all just for showmanship, because she can actually cast her spells by speaking normally or with no words at all, and on occasion she will write them down in her own blood. Aside from minor manipulations, Zatanna is also capable of complete elemental control, teleportation, altering reality, time travel, and a whole lot of other crazy stuff. Throughout the comics, we have seen her team up with the Justice League of America and the Sentinels of Magic to help take down the Secret Society of Villains, Eclipso, and so many more. Check out Zatanna for yourself in her first appearance in 1964's Hawkman number 4, or if you'd rather see her Prime Earth counterpart, check out 2011's Justice League Dark Number 1. Number 2. Mon-El. Did you know that Kryptonians aren't the only alien race that gain incredible superpowers with exposure to a yellow sun? Daxamites from the planet Daxam are actually an evolutionary offshoot from the people of Krypton, and much like their cousins, they gain all the abilities that Superman possesses on Earth. With that in mind, enter Mon-El, a Daxamite hero who was inspired by Superboy. Mon-El traveled to Earth when a young Clark Kent was still living in Smallville. When he was exposed to lead, his one and only weakness, Mon-El had to be placed in the Phantom Zone to save his life. Thousands of years later, he was cured by Brainiac 5 and recruited into the Legion of Superheroes, where he has been considered one of the most powerful members just to date. He might not be quite as strong as his Kryptonian counterparts, but he has shown that he can take anyone from the super family in a fight, as he's wiped the floor with the likes of Supergirl, Superboy, and even the Man of Steel himself. After the establishment of New Krypton, Superman decided to live with his people, and he then trusted Mon-El enough to entrust him with the city of Metropolis and a place in the Justice League. Check out his story for yourself in his first appearance in 1961 Superboy number 89. And number 1, Captain Atom. Sentenced to death for a crime he didn't even commit, Captain Nathaniel Atom was offered a full pardon if he took part in an experiment involving an alien metal and a nuclear bomb. He accepted, and instead of killing him, he survived the explosion and was blasted 18 years into the future and bonded with the metal to become Captain Atom. From that point on, he was basically a living nuclear reactor, meaning he could absorb and redirect energy, see electronic signals, and unleash massive energy blasts that can destroy cities, one of which was strong enough to destroy an entire universe. He can also change some physical properties of certain materials, turning arrows into butterflies, or even, creating his own universe. Now that is just one iteration of Captain Atom. How about we take a look at the second, Alan Atom. Now Alan Atom was the character carried over to DC from the original Charlton Comics series. Essentially a quantum Superman, Captain Alan Atom was born in a nuclear fire. Having his body reassembled with the aid of his atomically supercharged mind, he became a physical god on Earth. He has all the powers and abilities of Watchmen's Dr. Manhattan, and he was one of the few characters to survive Final Crisis, which I think just outright states how strong he is. Number 10. Count Vertigo. Now aptly named Werner Vertigo, he is a man who was born with an inner ear defect that affected his balance. So naturally he was implanted with a device that not only corrected that, but also gave him the ability to cause extreme vertigo in other people. That's right, his entire ability is disrupting his enemy's balance, and honestly you might think that's not really anything to write home about, but trust me, it is a lot more useful than you might think. Now Count Vertigo uses his ability to mess up the aim of even the best marksmen, to disrupt the guidance system of some of the most high-tech machinery, and even uses it to manipulate the emotions of people, causing them to flop between emotions like crazy. Now there are also 2 other Count Vertigos that fought against Green Arrow, but they use drugs to cause the same effects in their victims, and we are going to ignore them because using drugs is not cool.
It's true, it's not cool.
It's really not.
Number 9, Calendar Man. Calendar Man to most people is just a guy who's obsessed with the date. But in reality, he is also one of the most accomplished villains. During his first appearance, he almost managed to defeat Batman, one of the greatest and smartest detectives in the world, straight out of the gate, by giving him an almost unsolvable problem. Calendar Man sent an anonymous letter promising to commit 5 crimes, one each day, each one corresponding to a particular season and theme, with the 5th day also being a clue as to the true identity of Calendar Man, with the 5th season. Batman failed to capture Calendar Man on the first 4 days, often arriving too late to the scene of the crime. And on the 5th day, it was only an ad for Calendar Man's side hustle as a magician, who was playing 5 days at the Bijou Theater in Gotham, that allowed Batman to connect the dots. Where would Batman be without ads from the local newspaper? Local newspapers, they're important.
They really are. You always gotta support local.
Yeah.
Number 8. Phobia. Quite possibly one of the most underrated villains in the DC universe, Angela Hawkins III is Phobia, a member of the Brotherhood of Evil and constant enemy of the new Teen Titans that is capable of bringing your deepest and darkest fears to the surface. She basically uses psychic abilities to access the fear center of your brain and creates incredibly lifelike illusions that incapacitate pretty much everyone except for a select few who have been shown to be immune. Funnily enough, she is actually not immune to her own powers because she has some deep, dark insecurities and phobias hidden away as well, behind that, tough exterior. And that was exploited by Raven in an attempt to convert her to the hero side of things. Obviously that didn't work though, because since then, she has joined the Injustice League as a new member.
Number 7, Giganta. You expect Giganta to be strong, of course, considering she is a gigantic woman, but I also feel like she's a villain that is more often than not forgotten by people. So while you might expect the strength to come along with her, you just wouldn't really expect her at all most days. Dora Azul was attempting to cure her rare blood disease that she was born with by experimenting on herself. Her mad scientist ways caused caused her to end up in a conflict with Wonder Woman and later caused her to also become the villain she is today. In the original continuity of New Earth, Doris abducted the body of a strong woman named Olga, putting her own consciousness into that body and gaining the ability to grow in size when her plot to steal Wonder Woman's body had failed her.
Number 6. Automatopoeia. Now I personally love a good automatopoeia, but hey, I will take a bad one every now and then, and that is exactly what this villain is. He is a serial killer that specifically targets non-powered heroes, and he is so aptly named because he imitates the noises around him, such as his gunfire or the dripping water. He is also seen to be surprisingly durable for a human, able to take 6 arrows without slowing him down, and drop at least 7 stories and just keep on running. Now this highly trained villain is one of the most clever out there, not only attacking Oliver Queen's son Connor, but fooling Batman so much that he reveals his own identity. And also in true villain fashion, he messed with Batman even further by killing his fiancée Silver St. Cloud, slitting her throat while imitating the sound Batman's utility belt makes.
Number 5. Punchline. Punchline is a newer villain on the scene and as such has definitely been underestimated. But honestly, it's this attitude that only serves to fuel Punchline's desire to prove that she is actually worthy of all of that hype. As far as we know, she is like Joker, a non-powered human being. Punchline typically fights with small stiletto blades, and despite only being in a few issues so far, she has managed to slit Harley Quinn's throat and create her own specific brew of Joker venom just for Batman, which has succeeded in making him go pretty crazy recently. Imagining Alfred is still alive and still on his communique systems, despite the fact that, you know, he's very dead.
Number 4. Amazo. A super deadly android designed by the insane in the membrane scientist Professor Ivo that acts as an enemy to the Justice League. Thanks to its synthetic body, Amazo is capable of replicating anything about a person in its general vicinity, including their powers and skills, so you can probably understand why this android is so powerful and so dangerous. Amazo has been shown duplicating the powers and skills of Superman, Green Lantern, Zatanna, Black Canary, Elongated Man, and so many more, meaning his arsenal of powers to choose from is absolutely ridiculous. Not only that, he also has the ability to temporarily negate the powers of the hero that he's mimicking. So, for example, he could strip Superman of his powers for a finite amount of time and just pummel him into the dirt. That is absolutely insane if you ask me, and that is why he is on this list today.
Number 3. Harley Quinn. In Batman the Animated Series, Harley Quinn unintentionally pissed off the Joker because she proved just how valuable of a partner in crime she was, and how capable she is as a villain without even the Joker's help, and has also done so with her pal Poison Ivy. Though of course Harley and Ivy just believed they had kidnapped millionaire Bruce Wayne at the time and made him take them on a shopping spree. But still, that's pretty impressive. While many also think that Harley is always moving closer to becoming more soft and more of a hero than a baddie, let's not forget when she executed one of the most villainous plots, also without the Joker, killing tons of children across Gotham with free explosives that were disguised as video games, simply because she was bored and sort of feeling lost in terms of what to do with herself. So yeah, don't underestimate Harley Quinn.
Number 2. The Reverse Flash. Eobard Thawne, one of the many speedsters that you'll find scattered throughout time and space in the DC universe. Also known as Professor Zoom, this biggest Flash fanatic to ever live is capable of basically all the things that the Flash and his Speed family can do, you know, like time travel, super speed, and electrokinesis. But what really sets him apart is his ability to completely negate another's connection to the Speed Force, effectively stripping his fellow speedsters of their powers and rendering them honestly useless. His most impressive feat though would probably be when he, you know, set the entirety of the New 52 in motion by creating the Flashpoint timeline. Almost every hero and villain dies in some gruesome death thanks to the circumstances of this new universe, and yeah, that's pretty scary if you ask me.
Number 1. Lex Luthor. Now when you boil it down, Lex Luthor is just a dude. He's just a bald dude who has a big beef with Superman. Whether that's because he doesn't like the fact that Superman's an alien, or he blames Superman for his hair loss, depending on the comics you're reading. The fact remains that his brilliant intellect puts him in the running to be one of the strongest, most powerful, and definitely most iconic Superman villains of all time. The fact that 1. Luthor is also a human who keeps one of the most superpowered heroes, Superman, on his toes, and that 2. He managed to convince the country, despite being a supervillain, to vote him in as president are both pretty impressive.
Number 10. Hourman. Now I'm sure we can all name a handful of heroes of super strength, but some heroes just aren't lucky enough to be born with it or just haven't been under the right circumstances to gain them. However, in the DC universe there is actually a pill that you can take to make yourself stronger, faster, more durable, and just more adaptable for exactly 1 hour called Miraclo. Put a little more scientifically, the active ingredient in Miraclo is a special form of phosphorus, which bonds temporarily with the ATP in muscle cells to create an adenosine quad phosphate, which energizes the cells. With this pill, the vigilante known as Hourman was able to fight crime. Now there have been two men that have taken up the Hourman mantle, so let's just briefly go over both of them. Rex Tyler was the original Hourman and the scientist who actually created Miraclo. He used it to fight against crime during the Golden Age. Despite being an average human in every way, he was able to fight alongside the Justice Society and the Freedom Fighters thanks to this drug. And then his son Richard Tyler took up the mantle after his father's retirement, taking the Miraclo pills against his father's wishes in order to save Rex and then his fellow Justice Society members as well. Now despite his strength, Hourman was never anything close to the powerhouse like Superman. Honestly, he wasn't even ever the strongest member of his own team, but he sure could throw a punch in that 1 hour window, and that is why he's on this list today. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1940's Adventure Comics number 48. Number 9. Tanga. A pretty obscure character in the DC universe, so don't feel too bad if you're not familiar with her. Tanga is a cosmic being whose only real goal is to search for simple pleasures throughout the cosmos, which is just super wholesome, and I love it. She was introduced to us in the comic miniseries Weird Worlds by Kevin Maguire, and though she talks about having met Lobo and other members of the Green Lantern Corps before, we've never actually seen the character interact with anyone else, making us wonder if she's just making it all up. Although we don't know much about her abilities or powers, in terms of raw power, she certainly deserves her spot on this list today. When we first met her, she starts out as the guardian of the planet Chimera, and spends her time defeating monsters to protect the people there. She doesn't know her own strength though, which means she lacks the fine control necessary to master her powers, whatever they may be. Check her out for yourself in her first appearance in 2011's Weird Worlds Volume 2, Number 1. Number 8. Ultra Boy. In the far future of the 30th and 31st century, young heroes from around the universe banded together to form the Legion of Superheroes. We know about members like Cosmic Boy, Lightning Lad, Saturn Girl, and Brainiac 5, but when the team needs some muscle, they call upon Jonah of Rimbor, more commonly known as the superhero powerhouse Ultra Boy. Out of all the Legionnaires with all their different powers, he is one of the strongest characters on the team. While many of these characters use the natural abilities of the race to protect the citizens of the United Planets, Ultra Boy received his powers from exposure to radiation thanks to prolonged exposure to an energy beast. He has been shown to have all the same abilities as Superman, but he is so low on this list today because he can only use one of those powers at a time. He has the strength to rival the Man of Steel himself, but given the limitation of his abilities, Ultra Boy has a huge weakness. However, despite this, he remains one of the most useful members of the team. Check out Ultra Boy for yourself in his first appearance in 1962's Superboy number 98. Number 7. Loose Cannon. Back in the early 1990s, DC Comics used the Bloodlines crossover as an excuse to create a ton of new superheroes and villains. These new bloods were given powers when alien parasites attacked them, resulting in the creation of the superhero team the Blood Pack, and heroes like Hitman, Gunfire, and many others. Eager to have its own version of the Hulk, DC introduced the character Loose Cannon, who was a cop by the name of Eddie Walker before he gained incredible superpowers that made him seem destined for the spotlight. Similar to the Hulk, Eddie takes on a massive form when he gets angry. However, unlike his counterpart, Loose Cannon has several stages to its transformation. When he initially gets angry, his skin turns blue, but as he gets madder, it changes color. The next stage is purple, followed by red, until finally his skin is completely ghost white to match the white, hot rage he feels inside. In his most powerful form, Loose Cannon becomes uncontrollable and is unable to put together a coherent thought, which is absolutely terrifying because we have seen what characters like that can do. Check out this colorful beast of a hero for yourself in his first appearance in 1993's Action Comics Annual number 5. Number 6. Damage. Were you hoping for back-to-back DC Hulk clones on this list today? Well, I hope so, because that is pretty much what Damage is. In an attempt to create its own superpowered soldiers, the military conducted tests using dark matter energy left over from the Dark Knight's Metal event. The result was Ethan Avery, who gained the ability to transform into a giant, superpowered form for exactly 1 hour. Just how strong is Damage? Well, it's been heavily implied that he is much stronger than Superman himself. Even given just 1 hour, the monster has proven able to make easy work of modern military weaponry like tanks and aircrafts, and on top of that, he has defeated the Suicide Squad, Poison Ivy, and even proved to be too much for someone like Wonder Woman to handle. After the two fought in the streets and Diana took a serious beating, she told Batman and Superman that Damage could be the strongest opponent she has ever faced, which would actually include the Man of Steel himself. Hopefully one day we get a fight between the two so we can see just how much stronger he is than Superman. Give Damage's story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2017's Dark Days of the Casting, number 1. Number 5. Atom Smasher. Now, most superheroes with increased strength are disproportionately sized compared to the insane abilities that they're shown to have. Like, sure, Superman can lift an entire building over his head, but does he really look like a dude who can practically do anything he sets his mind to? Yeah, that's what I thought. Frequent Justice Society member Al Rothstein changes that up a bit because he has the ability to grow in size and can alter his density and strength directly proportional to that size, meaning if he's 60 feet tall, he is going to have the abilities a human being would have if they were that size. Even at his normal height of 7'6", Atom Smasher has been shown to be a formidable foe for anyone who crosses his path. He's capable of just plucking a jet plane out of the sky with ease, and can compete with just about any other superpowered person that comes to mind. Atom Smasher has put up a fight against the likes of Power Girl, Solomon Grundy, Martian Manhunter, Black Adam, and even fought off the Spectre once. Al also took the young hero Grant Emerson, aka the Other Damage, under his wing while the kid was trying to figure out himself, and even he, with his own super strength, couldn't match up to Atom Smasher, who easily pinned him down with one hand and just straight up knocked him out. Check out Atom Smasher's ridiculous strength for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1983's All-Star Squadron number 25. Number 4, Infinity Man. Now the identity of Infinity Man varies, but regardless of who is underneath that mask, he is always one of the most powerful warriors of the members of New Genesis. There have been at least 3 Infinity Men throughout DC Comics, the first being Astor, who passed on his powers to Drax, the older brother of Darkseid. And then the third is the primer incarnation of the character named Isaiah, who is the combined form of all of the Forever People. This most recent version of the character is one half of High Father, after the leader of New Genesis had gone to the Source Wall seeking answers for the war between him and Darkseid, and found the compassionate half of himself stripped away completely. This kinder and compassionate half is the one that became Infinity Man, and thanks to his new god physiology, he possesses basically all the abilities of Darkseid and the other new gods, and uses his powers for good. The original Infinity Man was created by the legendary Jack Kirby. Check out the original incarnations in 1971's Forever People number 1, or take a look at the New 52 Infinity Man in 2014's Infinity Man and the Forever People number 2. Number 3, Big Barda. The new gods of New Genesis and Apocalypse are some of the most powerful cosmic entities in the universe. Now they may all pale in comparison to the likes of Darkseid, but each has their own levels of strength and unique abilities. One of the most powerful among these new gods is Big Barda, who is trained at a young age to be a member and eventual leader of Darkseid's elite warriors, the Female Furies. She eventually rebelled against her controllers, escaped Apocalypse, and joined the New Genesis. Big Barda and Mr. Miracle are now married and living happily together on Earth, but that does not mean that they shy away from a fight when they have to. Over the years, Big Barda has shown herself to be one of the fiercest warriors in the DC universe, as her strength and fighting skills rival the abilities of Wonder Woman. She can overpower her former teammates and has defeated the likes of Knockout and Calabac in one-on-one combat. Her husband may be remembered as the world's greatest escape artist, but it's really Barda who holds the power in this relationship. In the past, Big Barda had served under the Justice League of America, proving that she can stand side by side with the world's greatest heroes, but sadly she dies at the hands of Infinity Man. However, at the end of Final Crisis, she is seen with a newborn Regenesis, so we're all kinda confused as to what's going on with her now. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance all the way back in 1971's Mr. Miracle number 4. Number 2, Orion. The biological son of the villainous Darkseid, Orion is an elite level warrior and seems to be the only other new god who can actually physically harm Darkseid in any meaningful way. Representative of the constant struggle of nature and nurture, Orion struggles to control his rage and inner brutal nature, but he's still considered to be one of the greatest and most powerful allies of New Genesis. Orion also has the benefit of his Astro Harness, capable of harnessing energy directly from the source itself, that he calls the Astro Force. On multiple occasions, he is shown to be as strong as the likes of Superman and Wonder Woman, and this was further proven with the biggest achievement he has on his resume, the fact that he was actually the one who finally took out Darkseid himself. With the elimination of the new gods in the lead up to Final Crisis, the final 2 members of this cosmic race of gods fought it out in the streets of Earth. Orion finally dug deep in himself and became the monster he had always tried to stop himself from being, and managed to battle Darkseid to a standstill. However, that all changed when the sun destroyed the father, and he ripped out Darkseid's heart directly out of his body in just one foul swoop. He was unfortunately killed during Final Crisis though with a Radion bullet. However, he was resurrected later on Earth alongside the rest of the new gods. Check out Darkseid's sons for yourself in his first appearance all the way back in 1971's New Gods, number 1. And number 1, the Spectre. The most powerful being in the DC universe by far has to be the Spectre. As God's spirit of vengeance, he is blessed with all sorts of powerful magical abilities, but it's his raw strength that really sets him apart from everyone else. The power of the Spectre is so great that it actually needs a human host in order to be kept in check. Jim Corrigan, Hal Jordan, and Crispus Allen have each taken control of the spirit of vengeance in order to enact his own version of justice onto the world. Over the years, we've seen the Spectre's amazing abilities, like how he's essentially invulnerable to all physical attacks, Unless you're Batman, that one time Spectre allowed him to hurt him. That was a weird sort of storyline, I don't know. This magical entity also has the ability to take out the entire magical community in one fist fight at a time. We're talking defeating Shazam with literally just one punch to the face. He's also seen capable of wrangling the Red Lantern Avatar of Rage known as the Butcher with just his bare hands. His most impressive feat though would have to be the time he engaged the Anti-Monitor in hand-to-hand combat and was able to overpower him for control over all of creation. The heroes needed his power in Crisis on Infinite Earths and he delivered in a very big way, saving all of reality from the brink. Check out this all-powerful being for yourself in its first appearance in 1940's More Fun Comics number 52.